And we begin with breaking news at 5 out in Gresham. That's where police are in a standoff with a man wanted by the Marshals Task Force. It started this afternoon in a backyard in the area of Northeast 36 Court and View Avenue. Alma McCarty joins us live from near the scene. Alma.
Well, Brittany, we are actually just right in front of where this scene is behind me. And as you can see, there are a lot of police lights, a lot of police cars. Both the Gresham Police Department and Multnomah County Sheriff's Office are up here. We also saw a couple of police drones up in the air during what is believed to be an armed standoff situation with a suspect who, as you said, barricaded himself on this road in Gresham. This, according to Gresham Police. This situation again happening on the 2000 block here, Northeast 36 Court, not far from the Subaru plant. Officers say a 47-year-old man wanted again by the Marshals Task Force for some sort of weapons offense was contacted in the backyard of a home here. Police say the suspect then barricaded himself in a shed, and officers heard the suspect fire multiple shots from inside. They are attempting to talk with him and make contact. We have not heard yet whether they were able to do that at this time. No officers were hurt, and nearby Reynolds High School was not locked down, although school officials told KGW that they are aware of the situation. Now, the area around the incident, as you can see, is blocked off in some areas, and traffic is moving slowly on some parts of Northeast Hogan Drive. That's all we have at this time, but we will be sure to bring you updates as soon as we get them. For now, live in Gresham, Alma McCarty, KGW News.
Alma, thank you. Also developing tonight, the safety of our power grid and attacks on substations. A central North Carolina county has been in the national headlines after shootings at 2 substations knocked out power for thousands this week. Officials said today most homes have had electricity restored, but the search for the suspect continues. And we're learning the threat extends into our part of the country. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Brittany Falkers. A new federal memo is warning of similar attacks in Oregon and Washington. And PGE told us today one of its substations was targeted just late last month. KGW investigative reporter Kyle Aboshi joins us now with details. Kyle.
Well, the memo suggests that power companies in Oregon and Washington have recently reported physical attacks on substations using hand tools, arson, firearms, and metal chains, possibly in response to an online call for attacks on critical infrastructure. The federal memo obtained by News Nation warns that in recent attacks, criminal actors bypass security by cutting the fence links, lighting nearby fires, shooting equipment from a distance, or throwing objects over the fence and onto equipment. Portland General Electric confirms it's been the target of at least one of those attacks. In a statement, PGE said it's aware of a deliberate attack on one of its substations in the Clackamas area in late November. No other details were provided, although the FBI is investigating. Federal law enforcement has sounded the alarm to domestic terror threats to critical infrastructure for years. A KGW investigation in 2005 found numerous examples of attacks on transmission and communication towers. Among the cases, nearly a dozen arson fires in the Portland-Vancouver area targeting communication towers in 2004. A lone suspect could be seen on security cameras, but no arrest was ever made. One of the most notable attacks occurred in 2003 when a Spokane man tried to remove bolts from transmission towers throughout the West Coast. We spoke with Michael Poulin as he was serving a 27-month sentence in federal prison.
Part of what I did was to illustrate that if you can't defend these things against an ancient, infirm geezer like myself, what hope have you got against defending against committed, dedicated, youthful, and possibly suicidal people who want to destroy these things?
Over the past decade, utilities have taken specific measures to protect vulnerable towers or substations, like adding walls, sensors, or cameras, although many remain exposed, especially those in rural areas. The FBI office in Portland declined to comment on that recent memo, but did urge the public to remain vigilant and report any suspicious activity to police.
Kyle, thank you. Oregon Governor Kate Brown has issued a new executive order over rising RSV, COVID, and flu cases. The order will help with hospital staffing and allow them to draw from a pool of medical volunteers and doctors. Additionally, the Oregon Health Authority is also trying to get up to $25 million in extra nurse staffing contracts to address that workforce shortage. State health officials say COVID hospitalizations are at their highest level since July and are expected to keep increasing. New details tonight on the lawsuit against the city of Portland, arguing homeless tents are blocking ADA access on city sidewalks. Back in September, 10 Portlanders with mobility disabilities sued the city over this. And as Blair Best reports, we're now learning just how many tents and tarps have been given out to homeless people over the past 2 years.
The attorneys representing those with disabilities just got access to hundreds of documents from the Joint Office of Homeless Services. Now, that's the county-run organization responsible for purchasing and handing out a majority of the supplies for people living on the streets. Through these documents, we're learning taxpayers have spent at least $2 million on tens of thousands of tents and tarps since 2020.
What we see on our streets today, side effects of a humanitarian crisis made worse by the pandemic, and in many ways still struggling to recover.
These are survival tools, that's all.
And surviving is what Johnny Ray has been doing in Old Town for 10 years. An important part of his survival, tents and tarps, like the ones that make up his brown hut on the side of Northwest Davis Street.
Oh, very helpful. Very helpful. It can save your life.
2 years ago, at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, Multnomah County's Joint Office of Homeless Services gave out tents to homeless nonprofits and people living on the streets in an effort to keep them safe as shelters closed amid COVID concerns. They also did this during severe weather events. Now, 2 years later, they continue to hand them out, many of which end up blocking city sidewalks, which some people with disabilities say makes it nearly impossible to get around.
What the county did was put tents on the sidewalks, which is the very reason why my plaintiffs are suing the city.
John DiLorenzo is the attorney representing the 10 Portlanders that sued the city over ADA access on the sidewalks.
I know of many instances in which people with disabilities were telling nonprofit groups, please do not block these sidewalks. And the nonprofit groups were just doing it anyway.
According to 2021 county budget documents, the Joint Office of Homeless Services gave out 6,550 tents and 27,000 tarps. But that was just for 1 year. The Joint Office tells KGW they haven't yet assembled the amount they gave out this past year. However, through recent subpoenas, the attorneys in this case obtained documents that show from March 2020 to September 2022, the county used at least $2 million taxpayer dollars to purchase 22,700 tents and 69,514 tarps.
A while ago, I used to drive around and think, where are all these tents coming from? And now I realize that we bought them.
The numbers break down to roughly 4 tents and 13 tarps per homeless person over the past 2 years. But for some, it's been much more than that.
I've had maybe like 30, maybe 40. I've been here 10 years.
Okay, and how many tarps would you say?
Maybe 40 or 50 maybe. I've had a few over the years.
Toby has had a new tent every year for the past 12 years. He gets them from friends or shelters. If you never had a tent out here, do you think you'd be out here this long?
Probably not. I might have got tired of it a lot faster. You know, if I didn't have any shelter.
Many of the supplies provided by the county, the city clears in routine camp removals, leaving the homeless coming back for more.
So the tents were either swept up or they disintegrated or they were just thrown by the wayside and people just kept supplying them with new tents.
The Joint Office says they used federal COVID relief money to supply many of the tents and tarps back in 2020. But now that money is running out and they're cutting back on supplies they give out. Yet the attorneys in this case found millions of taxpayer dollars were also used over the past 2 years. A settlement on this case is scheduled for next month. Blair Best, KGW News.
Portland City Councilors unanimously approved the hiring of 6 new firefighters to fully reopen a Southeast Portland fire station. That money to hire them will come from a $2 million federal grant. But it's not free money. To accept the grant, the City Council had to promise to at least keep the current level of staffing for the fire department over the next 3 years and not make any cuts. The department has been in a staffing crisis due to past budget cuts and retirements, and will spend $29 million this year on overtime for firefighters to fill shifts. This grant won't solve the problem, but hiring 6 more firefighters will open back up the station near Southeast Powell in Milwaukee to take 911 calls. City economists testified that while the country may dip into a slight recession next year, the city of Portland estimates tax revenues here locally will stay relatively the same. Also from City Hall today, Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler is directing city employees to work in person at least half of the time. It's under what the mayor's office calls the, quote, future of work model. That's set to start next April. The mayor's office says it's necessary as Portland transitions to a new form of government mandated by the voter-approved charter reform measure. Currently, about 40% of city staff are in the office 1 day a week. If you drive over the Abernathy Bridge along I-205 in Clackamas County, chances are that you've noticed all the construction equipment there. Well, it means the project that will make the bridge earthquake ready is officially underway. Let's bring in Mike Benner. And Mike, crews are using a massive piece of equipment all the way from Germany for this.
Yeah, that's right, Brittany. They're using an oscillator, affectionately known as Oscar the Oscillator. It was built in Germany, as you mentioned, then shipped across the Atlantic through the Panama Canal and up the west coast to the port of Tacoma, where it was loaded onto trucks and driven down to our area to begin seismic upgrades to the Abernathy Bridge. The bridge, of course, spans the Willamette River between West Linn and Oregon City. ODOT invited us onto a boat today to get a closer look at the work being done. The 200,000-pound oscillator will be tasked with drilling into the bedrock below the river and sediment to secure the new bridge supports. When this work is complete, the Abernathy Bridge will be the first earthquake-ready interstate structure across the Willamette River in the Portland metro area. Additionally, the bridge will have 3 lanes in each direction, plus an auxiliary lane for drivers entering and exiting I-205.
When you drive across this site, you can see it's a very active construction site. So certainly as a civil engineer, I may be skewed in thinking it's a pretty impressive display of construction. But I'll leave it to the regular traveler to let us know what they think as they're coming across the project.
All right, ODOT officials tell us the oscillator will be wrapped up with its portion of the project by the end of 2024. The end of 2025 is when the entire project should be complete. Brittany?
All right, thank you, Mike.